Hi everyone, welcome to today's NaaS event. I'm Paula Fountain. I'm the National Practice Manager for Aruba and HPE at Data 3, and I'm really excited today to actually introduce a very special guest, and that is Hannes Talind. Hannes is the Senior Director Global for Customer Success at Aruba. He's had over 20 years experience, and he's based in the US, and he's going to be our esteemed leader today, who will be talking us through everything to do with network as a service. So I'm going to hand over to Hannes now, and hopefully you will all get a lot out of today's session, as we're excited to be actually launching network as a service out into the Australian community. The other thing that I wanted to just all let you know is that there's quite a few people that have submitted questions to us. We're going to make sure that we answer those questions throughout this event. So Hannes has already received a lot of those questions, but can you please pop those into the chat if there's anything as you have or hear throughout the presentation that you want to query or delve further into, and then we'll try and answer those questions throughout the session. Thanks for that, and I'll hand over to Hannes now.
Oh, helps when I go off mute. Thank you so much, Paula, and thank you, Data 3. Really appreciate taking the time today to talk to you and your customers about our managed connectivity services, which is the Aruba NaaS solution. I think it's important to understand why Aruba came out with a NaaS solution, how it fits with current strategies that are in place, but also how is the value, how can you as a customer take full advantage of on one side the Aruba NaaS solution, on the other side the collaboration with Data 3 on getting that NaaS solution into production and really taking the full advantage of that. With that, let me just start with welcoming everyone and thank you for having me on today. If you got questions, as Paula said, please use the questions tab on the webinar to submit them, and we'll do our best to provide them. With that said, a couple of years ago, and I think it was 2017, Antonio Neri, our CEO and president of HPE, stated in Discover Las Vegas that he's going to transform HPE into a as-a-service company. Aruba at the time had what we called a campus subscription. We then, took on the name, or we were becoming part of the HPE GreenLake family, and we start building on what do we think is important for our customers, what are the challenges our customers walk into, what are the advantages that we, with 20 years of being in the business, really pioneering the WLAN and networking industry since 2002, what is the advantage that we can bring to the table? So if we're talking about the climate that currently is existing in the IT business, it's really a multitude of different items that IT organizations are trying to mitigate. It's obviously the increased load of IT staff. It's the requirement and desire for a simplified network management. At the same point in time, it's also how can we as an organization depend or provide a much faster way to our business outcomes by utilizing business applications without the infrastructure being the bottleneck. So it's not about, hey, we want to roll out these new point of sale devices in our environment, or we want to utilize these new applications on smart devices in our healthcare environment, or in our enterprise environment, but we cannot because the infrastructure is not ready for that. And from the Aruba perspective, we want our customers to utilize our products to the fullest. That also means that the innovation that we bring to the table, we want our customers to take full advantage of that. So that increasingly means that a customer should be able to have a much faster refresh of their environment. And refresh on one side can mean hardware and software, but it ultimately means enabling the latest in capabilities of features that we bring to market with every new version of release. It's really about finding and addressing those new data sources, those Internet of Things, getting them into the environment because they provide a lot of value, but then also finding the right way on how to deal with that, making sure that they are utilized to the purpose that they are for, without their being abused or providing more access to those devices than strictly needed from a security perspective. And then obviously, upon top of all of that, it's really the movement away from a standard CapEx purchase into a subscription model. A subscription model that obviously entails not just your hardware and your software, but also a level of service that meets the requirements that you as a customer will have. So we did a study with Gartner in 2019, and based on that, customers of networking environments say that they spend about 70% of their time troubleshooting and diagnosing issues. That means that 70% of their time they're trying to keep the lights on, which means 30% of their time they can be somewhat strategic. A phrase that comes to mind is what we call, or we baptized it, what is the time to innocence of your networking team? And time to innocence means how quickly can you assess if a reported problem is a networking problem or a application, database, or client-related issues. Specifically when it entails, critical applications, but also if it goes into remote sites. I know one of the questions that came up is how is this service relevant to oil gas companies with offshore facilities? The goal is to harness the data that exists in that environment and being very able and capable of finding and reducing your time to innocence. The faster you can identify a problem is or is not an infrastructure problem, the faster the right teams can address that problem. And that can be, from an infrastructure perspective, identify why there is such a delay, or why a client cannot connect to the environment, or why a certain feature is not working. But then if the infrastructure team says, hey, everything works from an infrastructure perspective, the faster a security team, a database administrator, an application admin, or a desktop admin can start and figuring out why the specific user is having those issues. Specifically, obviously, that goes for normal facilities and headquarters. But if you think about remote sites and remote locations where you don't always have teams readily available that can walk the premise, that can identify and see the issues, you have to rely much more on your data that is available in the environment. Then a couple of the challenges that we see in this edge to cloud era is obviously a growing footprint and a rapid pace of change. I think we can all look back at 2020 and seeing that the world stopped working. Well, the world didn't stop working, but we all stopped working, or we all stopped going to the office. Suddenly, the office that was the safe zone for us to have a social connection, do a job, and then step on a commute back home. Now everything completely changes overnight because of a pandemic, and we had to work remote. But not only did we have to work remote, we still wanted the same feeling working remote as when we were in the office. We didn't want to set up or have to set up different ways of connecting, messing around with cables and VPNs and all of that. Sometimes very complicated items for an end user perspective. So there was quite a bit of customers that we helped alleviate a lot of that burden by providing them a remote access solution. On top of that, a remote access managed solution, so that even the current IT team that was already under a lot of pressure was not pressured a lot more with that additional burden. So it really provided a quite a bit of relief from a instant investment perspective, but also from a resourcing perspective. Then obviously there is the low ability to really realize that solution value. And solution value is that when your environment is in the optimal state, you're wanting the versions of software that you need to run to enable the features that you need to have, and you don't spend 70% of your time really troubleshooting that environment. That is what we call, a solution value. And as I said earlier, it's really about harnessing the environment, the analytics that is in the environment. In these days, it's not normal or it's not common, and we should not be looking at, is my device up and running on my network, and therefore it is providing service. Because if you look at the solution set that we within Aruba have, from a switching perspective, but also from a WLAN perspective, specifically WLAN 8.x and 10.x and moving forward, is that the resiliency that is built in there is really built in there for critical enterprise applications. So even if an access point, for whatever reason, reboots, or even if a controller reboots, the system automatically heals itself without a potential impact of an end user or client connecting to it. So therefore, just measuring the uptime of a device is not of today's days, and we really need to look much further, not just only at is my device servicing clients and is my device providing a service to clients, but also what is the experience of those clients connecting? How long does it take to get a DNS? How long does it take to get a DHCP? What is my MOS score for my telepresence devices like Zoom, WebEx, Skype, and Microsoft Teams? And how can we do all of that in a way that doesn't immediately spike for capital spending, but still being able to move gracefully in a transition period like that? So when we're talking about NaaS, we also need to talk about what are the challenges that we're trying to resolve. So first of all, everything that we do is focused on the value that it brings to our customers. What we're trying to provide is an optimal performance, the ability to launch new services as fast as possible with no disruption, and really provide a hardened and secured environment. We're talking about best practices. We're talking about what are the level of software releases that are available and which one should I be using. But we're also talking about compliance and management reporting. What kind of vulnerabilities do I have in my environment? What kind of critical bugs do we have? What is my end of development or end of support date for the version of software that I'm running? And how can I strategically use all of that information to move further? But then we also need to talk about health checks and proactive actions, and potentially even a pay as you grow, like a ramp. So you don't have to, from day one, have to rip and replace everything, but just gently grow into the solution and really utilizing the latest features and capabilities as fast as possible. It is not a goal that we keep a customer on a status quo when they get into this service, get the solution up and running, realize that solution value, and then stay at that version of software for as long as possible. Because we want our customers to really take advantage of the value that we have. And the value really comes out of 20 years and ongoing innovating in our technology, innovating not just on our proprietary software, but also innovating in industry standards, innovating in like Wi-Fi 6, innovating like 2.5 gigabit ports on the switching line. And that is really to make sure that our customers can take that and start building their use case and their business cases on top of that. All of this is what we call network as a service. As I said earlier, it's part of the HPE GreenLake services family, and obviously it's brought to you today in collaboration with Data Tree. So if we talk about the flexible modular options for getting into a GreenLake for Aruba or in a NaaS environment, we have to talk about the different levels of service and what they mean. So first, let me say that all of the products that are owned by Aruba are part of this service. We're talking about Aruba LAN, WLAN, SD-WAN, ClearPass, and obviously Aruba Central and Aruba Central on-site. For those customers that have requirements where they don't want their management platform in the cloud, Aruba Central on-premise is a perfect solution to provide relief for that. So in that, there are two distinct different levels of service that we provide. A is a customer experience management with our NaaS dashboard. And customer experience management is what we call a guided operation. And in that guided operation, you as a customer will have access to a NaaS portal. You are able to identify and see the life cycle of your products in terms of what are the vulnerabilities, what are the critical bugs, what are the product announcements, all of those pertinent, important items of information. Along with that, we also provide a customer success manager. So I'm obviously running our customer success organization within Aruba, and hence the reason that I'm talking to you today. But it's also going to be someone in my team that is going to be taking your hand, working together with Data Tree and you as a customer, and making sure that the value that is in the system, the value that is in the service, is actually also being delivered to you as a customer. So that customer success manager is the one that is going to be helping you with the complete journey of onboarding, and then obviously will ongoingly assist you with weekly and bi-weekly conversations on what is it that is available in your environment and how can you make your environment more usable, how can you take advantage of certain features. That's what we call a guided model, in where we don't operate, we are just guiding you as a customer on the operation of the environment, and therefore we do not. That is what we call intelligent operations. In the intelligent operations, it's really a managed service, as we call it. And we call it managed, or we call it intelligent operations for the sole reason that it's completely focused on the proactive nature of the environment. I talked about it earlier. It's really about what is the level of experience that my clients are getting connecting to the environment. Obviously, if an event happens, we will absolutely reactively solve that as well, which is what we call a reactive case. But we try to be in front of that by providing a proactive and sometimes even preemptive level of service. All of this is offered with the financial flexibility and service intelligent automation from our A, HPEFS financials, and B, our NaaS dashboards that provide the service intelligent automation, which also includes an ITSM workflow and workflow automation. So how does it look in terms of the three-stage engagement for continuous improvement? There is a guided onboarding, there is an optimized operations, and then there is a proactive changes that really goes then all the way back full circle. So from a guided onboarding, it's really about leveraging and using on one side Data Tree, who's a very established name, who has been an Aruba partner for quite a bit of time with a lot of experience. And then in collaboration with our customer success manager, we will then put you as a customer on the right path for onboarding, including making sure that the solution meets all the requirements that were agreed upon during the initial conversations. Then from an optimized operation, there were again those two different levels of engagement. The customer experience management with Aruba Service Manager that provides the inventory insight, the software insights, and the reporting on that, which is what we call You Operate, We Guide. And then there's the service intelligence of the intelligent operations, which is 24/7 live monitoring, proactive remediation, but also completely focused on making sure that items don't happen in your environment, but if they do, the system will automatically identify them, will mitigate that, and will solve it. Any proactive changes that will come in will then go back into the process, which is similar to the guided onboarding. If there is an environmental change that needs to happen, then we will assess how to best do that. Obviously, depending on the level of service, some of this is done by us, some of this can be done in conjunction with Data Tree. jumping into a NaaS environment is really to drive the approach to sustain critical benefits. It's up to 75% faster, again, if we're talking from a global IT perspective. The simplification of IT by having the best practices, by starting with the best practices, by having a simplified management platform, really decreases the amount of time you spend on keeping the lights on. There's always going to be a level of basic activities that need to happen, but sensibly reduce that significantly to up to 44%. And then by having a much better control of the environment, by again leveraging the best practices, leveraging the best configuration reporting that we provide, having the communication ongoingly with the customer success manager as well with our NOC, if you would choose for the intelligent operations, would really increase the IT team's productivity by reducing the load on the support team, thus really maximizing your return of investment while you are accelerating your time to value. So now we talked a lot about the stuff that we can do. I think it's also time to talk about how we do that. In terms from a service intelligent automation that we have is that our NaaS dashboard, which includes the automation of ITSM workflows, which has in there its KPIs, alerting and reporting, that really provides the support analytics, the software analytics, and the configuration analytics in a way that is applicable and contextual to the environment that you as a customer will have. And with that said, I'm just going to quickly jump from one screen to the next to give you guys a little bit better insight in how we do that. So this is our NaaS dashboard. In there, we have our ITSM workflows, our changes, our reporting, our services insight, and the documentation. Documentation is really where we keep a repository of all the information that we've collected during the onboarding of our customers and their environment in terms of our statements of work, but also the golden configurations, the best practices, all the documentation that is pertinent to the environment is going to be in that repository for you as a customer to have, but also for us as the service provider and our NOC team to take full advantage of that. So if we talk about our services insight, let me just quickly open that screen up. So we use as a front part of our services manager or NaaS dashboard, we use ServiceNow. Our ITSM workflow is also provided by ServiceNow, and I think that I should not have my VPN enabled. And there it is. So our services of our NaaS dashboard, and if I click on the Aruba demo, then obviously we see very quickly a lot more information about that. So in a very easy, detailed perspective, we see how many devices are under the account. So we have what we call account and sub-account. So if you have multiple different locations, you can have a account Acme and then location Bugs Bunny, location Looney Tunes, location Daffy Duck. And in that, then we would be listed as all the devices that are there. And then very quickly, we are able to identify how many devices are in there, what are the actionable issues, if any, what is the overall health, uptime, system health, RF health, and client health. So if we click on this demo lab of Santa Clara, we open up quite a little bit more information. So the overall health that we're seeing is bad. It's bad because 7 access points are down. We see from a license utilization, nothing spectacular, everything is okay. But we do see that there was some security advisories. We do see some product advisories. We do see release note defects, and we see some end of service and end of development announcement. I'm just quickly going to go from one to another, where we actually have a little bit more devices in there. So in this case, again, the overall health is fair. it's fair because we actually have some items that are down. So then we also see that from a proactive incident perspective, there is no critical, no high, no moderate, but we do see 4 low items that are identified by the system on a proactive level. We'll jump into that in a second, what that means. So if we jump to the controllers, because obviously one controller was down, if we jump to that, it will immediately take us to the inventory, and then we will see the status of that controller that is down. We also see, how are my licenses doing? We also see what are my security advisories, my additional alerts, and we do that for all of our products. So from controllers to access point to Aruba Instant, ClearPass, and switches. So there's a lot more information in there as well, in terms of host name, model, version numbers, even build numbers as well. If we go to the product advisories, so in this case we can see that the controller with hostname HTS MC 701001, which is a Aruba 7010 version 8508, has a product advisory. In this case, there is a default certificate revocation, which was published on September 8, 2016. And then all of the announcements that we actually have on that particular version of software with that version of hardware, we will list that here. The same goes for security advisories. All of the security advisories that are pertaining to the specific environment that you as a customer would have, we will list them in there. And obviously our customer success manager is going to be a great guide to provide additional information for as far as you would need that. Release noted defects. So all of the release noted defects, including the bug IDs, including the feature and the platform, will be listed. And then if you would click on the exclamation mark, it would tell you if we know a symptom that's triggering that, what the symptom is. We know the scenario. The issue occurs when the net destination are used in routing ACL. The issue is observed in Mobility Masters running 8010 and later version, and there is no workaround for this particular one. So that is really the level of lifecycle management that the system automatically is providing, including, when is the version of software that is running on my devices going to be end of support. In this case, 8508 end of support date is going to be June 30th. So that means that from right now until June 30th is the time where that product is still fully compliant or fully supported by our engineering team, but obviously the recommendation is going to be for the customer to upgrade. And again, that is where the customer success manager is really going to have an active role in guiding you as a customer through that. The other thing that we also do very well is configuration best practices. So obviously we've been doing this business for more than 20 years. We're providing this service on our own products. We have a world of information available by our support engineers, by our professional services, by our QA, and by our PLM. And based on all of that, including real life active information that we are getting from multiple different environments and networks, we are able to provide a best practice report. So this will pretty much state that, for the hostname SLR01 Wi-Fi 06A, which is a Aruba 7220 with IP address, in this case, enable BCMC optimization for the WLAN is not enabled. So when, so broadcast multicast happens on an environment, and when there is too much broadcast multicast, that can actually will have a negative benefit to the CPU of the devices. So by enabling broadcast multicast optimization, you're actually reducing the amount of traffic that really hits the CPU, and therefore you're optimizing the environment. So these are a couple of those nuggets that the system is able to provide ongoingly based on the configuration that is being used, and that is really to take full advantage of. So again, this example is really going into the on the controller, we obviously do that as well for our Aruba Instant APs, as well for Aruba ClearPass, as well as our switches. And very shortly, we will also be adding our SD-WAN acquisition of Silver Peak, or which we call Aruba Edge Connect, into this dashboard too. So if I now go back to the overview perspective, obviously there is other things happening here as well. So we talked about the inventory or lifecycle management. We kind of glanced over proactive services that are happening, but then there's also, what kind of changes are upcoming. So in an environment where there is intelligent operations, where Aruba is managing the day-to-day and monitoring the day-to-day, it could be that as a customer you have a request for change. That request for change will go to what we call a CAP process, a change approval board. In that CAP team is represented, obviously, Aruba subject matter expertise, but also you as a customer are represented there as well. Because if we want to make a change to the environment, to enable features, to provide an update because a identified issue, to be proactive, or even reactive because something happened and it requires to do an update, then obviously we need to provide that information to you as a customer, including what we're doing, why we are doing it, what is the risk of not doing it, and when we ideally want to do this potential change. The when obviously is always going to be adjusted to the requirements of the customer. Clearly, if a customer is running a 9-to-5 operation or a 24/7 operation, 7 days a week, we need to very diligently collaborate on when this particular change can be implemented. That also works the other way around. There is a change that you as a customer are requiring. Again, we will use the same CAP process in that you will say, this is the change that I want to do. We will then assess the potential impact of that. Is the change going to open the door for potential exploits? Is this change going to destabilize part of the environment or maybe the entire environment? So we will then provide an assessment and say, hey, this is a risk analysis of that change. And then in that we will say, hey, this is good, or this is maybe too risky. Let me know, why, how to provide a much better perspective in terms of why that is risky and how we can avoid that potential risky change. Then if you go over to cases, so in this case, there is no actionable issues. Inactionable issues is where the system automatically identifies issues that need to be mitigated. The system is very smart. It's using artificial intelligence and machine learning, but the system is not making changes on its own. We will rely solely on the change approval board, the CAP process, to make any changes, including changes that the system thinks are very important and are pertinent to make those as soon as possible. We will still walk through that same process. In terms of ITSM cases, very easy. Obviously, in this cases, there were a couple of proactive cases that have been identified. If we would click on it, we will see when those cases were opened, created, if they were actionable, when they were assigned, and when they were closed. And then including, what are the comments that we used when we closed them, as well as what was the common date. Then we can also, provide information, or we will provide information on closed incidents. We can filter that on proactive or reactive, and then priority on whatever the priority you choose to want to have. And we do that obviously for all the cases that we do. We also provide ITSM metrics. In this case, there is not that much metrics available because this is a demo account. Maybe if I jump to a different demo account, we're able to see a little bit more. And then if for whatever reason in an intelligent operation managed environment and we need to start working with our engineering organization, then obviously we don't expect you as a customer to interface with our engineers. We will do that on your behalf. We are also clearly managing the environment, but then we will provide transparently what is happening, what is the status, what is the priority, when it was last updated, what is the version, and a potential defect ID if we have that. So now we're just talking about, cases. Obviously, from a networking perspective, there could be a lot of additional information that is pertinent as well. So again, let me quickly jump from one account to another account that has a little bit more devices in there. So what we're seeing right now from an access point perspective, an incident, obviously we see quite a bit of channel utilization on 2.4. 5 gigahertz looks relatively clean. Obviously, we've seen the memory, the uptime, the noise level for the different technologies. We also see the devices. We do see that the 2.4 gigahertz has a bad utilization and also has a bad noise floor for this particular client. But we do that for all of our devices, including ClearPass, where we obviously watch very carefully the memory utilization and the disk utilization as well as CPU. And then the same goes for our switching as well. The switches also have the capability to provide some thermal information, which can be very important. And if they provide PoE, then we can also provide the PoE data as well. Again, this is really when we're doing intelligent operations, because based on the thresholds, the baselines, the trending information, we can then take all of that information and the system will then proactively start notifying our NOC team that what we're seeing here is not within the normal standard for this particular customer, for this particular location, and therefore we can then proactively start mitigating those issues. The same goes when we're talking about clients. What kind of clients do we have? How do they connecting? What is the average speed? What is the physical interface that they're connecting to? What is the overall health? So all of that pertinent, important information is something that we're ongoingly are tracking to really make sure that we capture the experience that our clients have. Obviously, right now, these are all wireless clients. If you have clients connecting on switch ports, we will absolutely measure them the same way, but obviously client signal to noise ratio does not exist on the switch port. So that is kind of in short, a highlight of what we call our NaaS environment. More than happy to have a deeper dive on that with some of you if there was an interest for. But I hope that provided a good perspective on the capabilities that we have, as well as some of the other levels of automation. So as I'm going back to the main event in terms of the presentation, so here are some of the quarterly dashboards that we provide to, in this case, this is for one of our customers. When we talk about what is the services uptime, what is our service level agreement, what did we agree upon, how did we respond to that in terms from alerting, responding, and resolution, how many devices are currently being managed, what is our software compliance, and again, software compliance goes into, what is the amount of critical bugs that are open on the version of software that we're running, what is the vulnerabilities that are open, what is the product announcements, and what is the compliance just in general in terms of is the version of software that we have still supportable by the engineering team. Then what did we do from a notification perspective? Critical, warning, and major. Did we validate all of them and did we report on them, all of them? And then if we're talking about cases and case management, how many cases were identified? In this case, 26. How many of them were identified by customer? 0. All of them were identified by our NOC. Of those 26, 18 were proactive. So proactively, we prevented an issue from happening. Thus, for proactively, we prevented a negative experience or even downtime. And then 8 of them were reactive, and those 8 could be that a switch port or a switch lost its power, or an access point rebooted. Really reactive kind of issues that, sometimes you're not able to catch that proactively. But then still, if you look at all of those cases, we're still able to identify them before the customer reported them or before the customer identified them for us. And then obviously, what kind of changes do we have, and when did those changes have? This is a very high level dashboard that's really relevant for an executive team to get on a quarterly perspective. There are much more detailed level of information that we can provide on a daily, weekly, and monthly perspective. In this case, for ClearPass, as an example, including the next level of information that we can provide as well in terms of, what kind of errors that we have. Again, these examples are for ClearPass. We can provide this information, obviously, for all of the products that we have. I just chose that these were the ones that we would be using. So then, bringing this back a little bit into the spiel, there were a couple of questions asked earlier, and that was, where does the Aruba NaaS fit into the corporate entities that are already in the midst of a cloud migration? So our Aruba NaaS network as a service obviously will assist in that migration to a cloud environment, but there's quite a bit of products that live on-prem, that live in your environment. So there is not an immediate requirement that it has to be cloud or even cloud enabled. It obviously provides additional benefits if it is cloud enabled, and we can talk about that probably in a much more detailed deep dive. But it will fit in there because you can actually get into a Aruba NaaS solution even if you already have an existing environment. Let's say that you have currently a WLAN and a switching solution, but Aruba ClearPass from a NAC perspective is really something that is going to help you provide a much more dynamic, secure, agile environment for a seamless onboarding of clients into your environment. And you may not have the expertise, or maybe if you have the expertise on ClearPass, you may not have enough resources to take that on. So then ClearPass could be a perfect entry in getting into this NaaS subscription model, as well as, maybe starting with SD-WAN as well. So there are multiple ways on how we can get into it. I think a couple of the things that are important is that all of the stuff that we talked about will be delivered, including Aruba hardware and software. It does include all of the support and maintenance contracts. It's really focused on enhancing the customer success by leveraging as much of automation as possible. It's obviously a subscription model, and we do provide secure equipment recycle, upcycle, and even sale and leaseback. So there was a question that was asked by, I forgot the name of the individual, but if you bought a WLAN or switching solution a year back or 2 years back, there's quite some additional value inside of that environment. So at that point, there were a couple of options. One option is that we will buy out that equipment. We'll give you cash credits that can be used for the new Aruba solution. We will dispose of that equipment the best possible way. And then you will start with an Aruba solution moving forward. The other thing that we can do is we can actually buy out that product and lease it back to you. So that will give you a cash incentive. And then, as it goes for all the products that we recycle and upcycle, we do provide certificates of the way how we dispose of hardware. And the way to dispose of hardware is really, one of the most advanced ways that reduces the carbon footprint to the max that is currently possible and available. So obviously the environment is a top of mind conversation for many customers around the world, specifically from an HPE perspective, Aruba perspective. We are trying to do everything we can to reduce our carbon footprint. Getting rid of product or recycling them to the max of our ability obviously falls right into our notion of having a clean footprint as possible. And with that also becomes not just the fact that we did it the right way, but also the proof that you can then bring to your board of directors, or maybe you even have a environmental SAR inside your organization that is very keen of getting that kind of information. So let me just quickly go over a couple of the questions that we have. So Peter is asking, is the monitoring and dashboards readily available for client usage? So if that question is, are you as a customer able to absorb the information that I just showed you? Yes, absolutely, 100%. Obviously depends a little bit on the level of service. In the guided model, we don't do the 24/7 monitoring. So all of the proactive cases, all of the automation that is associated with that is not going to be available because that's not part of the service. In the guided model, we do the inventory part, we do the best practices part, but all of that will be available for you as a customer. Then Amit was asking, does this require a wholesale migration to Aruba? What about existing environment of existing investment? And does this replace existing change processes? So I think I just addressed that to a certain extent. So obviously the whole motion of going into a subscription model is the evergreen refresh. So if you go with a WLAN and switching and ClearPass and SD-WAN solution today, you can actually choose based on the requirements that certain products are going to be refreshed over 3 years, while other products can be refreshed over maybe 5 years. And specifically, I'm talking about the leaps moving forward that we're making from a WLAN perspective. Obviously, Wi-Fi 6 is available today. Wi-Fi 6E is going to be coming out very quickly. So if you would go into WLAN today, you could decide that instead of doing a 5-year on my WLAN, I'm doing only a 3-year on my WLAN. So in 3 years from now, when Wi-Fi 6E is really penetrating the market, you have a lot more clients being able to use Wi-Fi 6E because those clients are going to have some lag. But then in 3 years from now, I want to take full advantage of that. So that would mean that for the WLAN, we can say in 3 years, we're going to refresh your environment and then go for a technology that at that point in time meets the requirements that you have. And that could be Wi-Fi 6E, that could be Wi-Fi 6E later version. On the switching side, a lot of development that we're making on that, obviously, but from a hardware perspective, it is, it's not making the leaps and bounds and leapfrogs progression moving forward. So on the switching side, you can say, hey, I'm going to consume my switching environment in a 5-year term. And then obviously in that 5-year term, you will get all of the latest features and capabilities that we as a vendor are putting out on the market that applies to the hardware that you have. So that could be a perfect suitable situation, and that creativity in terms of product and term of the subscription can be pliable and can be pretty flexible. So then Atmark is asking, what are the things customers need to pay attention to considering and moving to NaaS? So what is important is that you get the solution that meets your requirement, the requirement that you have today, but also taking in consideration where you want to be 12 months, 24 months from now. If you don't know that exactly, there is actually quite a bit of flexibility inside the NaaS program as we have it today, which means that you can grow over time. You can always add additional products. You can always add additional locations into it. There's quite some flexibility. You can also choose when you have 10 locations and you move from one location from one city to the next city, to actually have that product from that one location move along with that. So there's quite a bit of flexibility and dynamics involved in terms of moving products around. And then obviously you can also start with, hey, I really like this subscription model, but we're trying to manage it ourselves. If at some point in time you're saying, hey, we try to manage this ourselves, but we have so much other stuff as an IT organizations that we are being told to be focusing on, stuff that are really critical to the business outcomes of our company. Can you guys help us? Then we can always say, okay, we're going from this guided model into an intelligent operating model to really make sure that you can focus your own resources and time on where it makes the most benefit, most difference for you as a company, as organization. And I think I so far asked all of the questions that were there. I'm just gonna see with Caitlin or Paula if there are any questions that I missed. If not, please let me know, and then I will try to address them.
Hi, Hannes. It's Paula here. Just letting you know that you answered those questions beautifully that we had submitted prior. There has been no questions. I think that's because the content that you've delivered today has probably been very spot on, and that hopefully it's been easy for people to digest. Therefore, for anyone that has any questions, now's your time to ask them. Other than that, I'd just like to say thank you, Hannes, very much for joining us today and for letting everyone know about the service that we have available in market now. Just for everyone else, we have architects, Aruba architects and specialists available to walk you through any kind of solutioning as far as network as a service is concerned. So please reach out. I think Caitlin will pop up my email address if you'd like for us to come out and talk to you further in relation to this. And have a great rest of the afternoon. And we thank you, Hannes, very much for joining us from the States today. It's been really great to have that content shared for our customers. So thank you.
No, thank you, Paula. Obviously, Data3 is a highly regarded partner for Aruba, and the level of service that you guys are providing to your customers really is in the same spirit of customer first, customer last. So let me thank you and everyone that is on today.
Thank you.